degree candidates, colleagues, honored guests, and friends. As the Dean of Graduate Education at UCLA, I'm delighted to welcome all of you to this doctoral hooding ceremony, a long-awaited and wonderful occasion for our graduates, their families, and friends. I would now like to introduce the distinguished members of the platform party. First, the faculty processional marshals, and then the deans and faculty participants who will read the candidate names and hood the candidates. As I call your name, will you please stand and remain standing until all have been announced? The faculty processional marshals are Roger Wakimoto, Vice Chancellor for Research and Professor of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences. Thank you. If you could hold your applause until the end, because I've got many more names to go. Kathleen Komar, Interim Vice Provost of Academic Personnel and Professor of Comparative Literature. The readers of the graduates' names will be David Skaberg, Dean of Humanities and Professor of Asian Languages and Cultures, Darnell Hunt, Dean of Social Sciences and Professor of Sociology and African American Studies, and Jayathi Murthy, Dean of the Henry Samueli School of Engineering and Applied Science and Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. Our first pair of hooding marshals this evening will be Eileen Strempel, Dean of the Herb Alpert School of Music, Onibuchi Ara, Associate Dean in the Graduate Division and Professor of Epidemiology. Our second pair of hooding marshals are Jessica Catalino, Chair of the Academic Senate and Professor of Anthropology, and Kristen McKinney, Chief of Staff and Chief Financial Officer in the Graduate Division. Our third pair of hooding marshals consists of Brian Kite, Interim Dean of the School of Theater, Film, and Television and Professor of Theater, and Marissa Lopez, Associate Dean in the Graduate Division and Professor of English and Chicana, Chicano, and Central American Studies. I would also like to recognize one more campus leader who is here to celebrate this joyous occasion, Steve Dubinet, who's Interim Dean of the David Geffen School of Medicine. Thank you for being here today. You may now all be seated, and you may all applaud. I now have the great pleasure to acknowledge and introduce you to our degree candidate processional marshals who open today's ceremony. Our first marshal is Kadidia Adula. Today, Kadidia will be awarded a doctorate of philosophy in neuroscience. Originally from the Republic of Congo, she lived in France for a few years before moving to New York, where she earned her Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Brooklyn College, CUNY. Following that, Kadidia entered an NIH-funded post-baccalaureate program at Icahn School of Medicine, where she investigated epigenetic and mitochondrial changes in models of multiple sclerosis. The title of Kadidia's dissertation is Investigating the Cell Type Specific Potentials for Axon Regeneration in Zebrafish. Her research inquired into the intrinsic pathways regulating axon regeneration in the peripheral nervous system. While at UCLA, Kadidia was the recipient of various awards, including the Eugene V. Cote-Robles Fellowship and the UCLA Graduate Dean Scholar Award. Kadidia is currently a postdoctoral fellow in developmental biology and regenerative medicine at University of Colorado Anschutz, where she aims to contribute to the understanding of localized myelin plasticity in response to neuronal activity. After completing her postdoctoral training, she would like to stay in academia and run her own laboratory. Kadidia.
Good afternoon, dear graduates, honorees, faculty, and parents. I am so honored to stand with you today. For me, this moment represents an affirmation that I can create safety and stability in a chaotic world. I was born in the Republic of Congo, Central Africa. When I was 11, a civil war erupted in my country, forcing my family to leave all we knew behind. As we were fluent in French, my father temporarily relocated us to France, where we lived for several years, waiting for the situation back home to return to normal. We waited in vain. My father then decided that if we were to start over, there was no better place to do it than in the United States, where we too could chase the American dream. So it was that my parents, siblings, and I settled in New York. Like some of you, I am an immigrant. Being an immigrant is difficult, but as a big sister, I knew achieving our American dream meant that I had to lead and be a role model for my siblings. Therefore, I created a vision for the future where I would lead through education. In 2001, I was the first member of my family to receive a high school diploma. It would be another 10 years before I graduated from Brooklyn College with a bachelor's degree in biology. It took many years for me to learn English, to overcome culture shock, and to adapt to my new country. It was also during my undergraduate studies that I developed a fascination with the brain and how the nervous system works to enable us to do everyday things like learning, walking, being creative, and interacting with others in diverse social settings. Indeed, it's easy to take all these experiences for granted until something goes wrong. I chose to receive my graduate training at UCLA. I envisioned that as a PhD student, I would be at the forefront of discovery, asking questions that were not asked before and contributing new knowledge to the field of neuroscience. I found formulating hypotheses and setting up experiments to test my ideas exhilarating. I even liked writing reports about frustratingly inconclusive results. Of course, writing reports about successful experiments was a lot more enjoyable. As recent events have demonstrated, we still live in a chaotic world. As a Black woman in the United States, there are times when I do not feel safe going to the supermarket or even walking down the street in gym clothes. But I felt safe on campus. I felt safe because the director of my graduate program, the members of the neurobiology department, and other faculty members in the biosciences at UCLA made me feel safe. They treated me like a colleague, heard me, and took my ideas seriously, provided me with comfort and understanding when I needed it. Because I felt safe on campus, I was able to complete my thesis work, and I am grateful to all of them for that. When my family first left the Congo, we fled chaos with no clear plan. Although there is still chaos in the world, I benefit from the safety and structure my education provides. I am happy to report that my siblings followed in my footsteps. 2 of them have master's degrees, and 1 is considering a PhD for herself. As a first-generation student, I had to depend on the leadership of those outside my family to get to where I am today. I have a plan to pay it forward by continuing to lead others as a scientist and an educator. I want to emphasize that the work we do at institutions of higher education like UCLA and at the University of Colorado Anschutz, where I am now a postdoc, not only enriches the lives of individual students, but it also prepares them to be tomorrow's leaders, and this serves us all. My journey started as a big sister, trying to help her siblings secure a place in the world, but I came to realize that I am part of something even greater. Over the past 2 years, we were all reminded of the essential role of science. Through our collaborative work as scientists, we can lead society out of crises like this ongoing pandemic. There will always be chaos and uncertainty in the world, but our awesome responsibility as leaders will be to meet these challenges head-on. Once again, my congratulations to the graduating class of 2022.
Thank you so much, Khadija. We're really glad that you shared some of your story with us. That was really moving. Our second Marshal is Firas Graham. Today, Firas will be awarded his Doctorate of Philosophy in Musicology. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in music and Bachelor's of Science degree in microbial biology from UC Berkeley, his MFA in piano performance from UC Irvine, and his MA and CPhil in musicology from UCLA. The title of his dissertation is Visions of the Pianistic Self, Don Shirley, Rachmaninoff, and Music Performance Studies, which proposes a humanized approach to performance analysis that unites performers' biographies, lived experiences, temperaments, cultural dispositions, and physicalities with empirical observations to explore novel, multidimensional areas of the hermeneutics of recorded performances. During his time at UCLA, Firas was the recipient of numerous awards, including the Eugene V. Coda-Robles Fellowship, an Andrew W. Mellon Fellowship, and grants from the UCLA Arts Initiative and UCLA Center for Musical Humanities. He also received the Herb Alpert School of Music Dean's Medal and Musicology Department Distinguished Teaching Award. At UCLA, Firas was co-organizer of and participant in the Music Performance Studies Today conference at UCLA. He also served as a graduate student researcher for EPIC, Excellence in Pedagogy and Innovative Classrooms. This upcoming academic year, he will be heading to Stanford University as a postdoctoral fellow.
Good afternoon and welcome to all. Thank you, Dean Ettner, for the very kind introduction. My hearty congratulations to all doctoral degree candidates. Amid my enthusiasm for being selected last Friday as a Marshal for our hooding ceremony, I admit, having just defended and having just filed my dissertation, I wondered if I could even get out of bed, let alone give a speech. I am exhausted, as I know many of you are. The other day, I looked into the mirror and, frankly, was horrified by the 3 white stress hairs I saw growing out of my head, which, of course, I immediately proceed to rip out by their roots. But I was wrong. Those are hard-earned white stress hairs. Our exhaustion is good. It means something happened. It means we completed our doctorates. I reflect on teaching a single undergraduate cohort remotely during the height of the pandemic over an entire academic year. The students were initially stressed out, isolated in their virtual worlds, uncertain about the future, and in states of existential angst. Relative to prior years, my teaching assignment was unusual, ultimately finishing at 10 p.m. after 4 straight hours, with students logging in from different time zones and continents, as I know many of you have experienced. Still, I marveled at these students. As time progressed, they came to devour their readings, bring in brilliant insight and critical thought, wrote eloquently, and contributed to vigorous, complex classroom discussions. We studied music, history, culture, politics, and some of the most powerful social movements. As these students pursued knowledge and clarity, I saw that their study heightened their humanity. They became vulnerable to one another in a spirit of empathy and sensitively listening to one another. They valued their peers' unique perspectives and circumstances. So, our classroom became a refuge from the exhausting tension that surrounded us with the SARS-CoV-2 contagion and a sharply divided, volatile America. Through their learning experiences, these students emerged as citizens who would likelier sustain democracy, as philosopher Martha Nussbaum might say. The question that follows is how such a spirit might spread throughout the world beyond UCLA's microcosm. I'm reminded of the quotation set in stone just above the arch of this hall's proscenium by UCLA's first provost, Ernest Moore. Perhaps we can read it all together. Are you ready? Education is learning to use the tools which the race has found indispensable. A doctorate is a long race in transcending and resolving tensions masterfully using highly specialized tools. So I remind you to think about the meaning of your new title, doctor, which comes from the Latin docere, verb to teach. No matter where you're headed, academia, the private sector, industry, nonprofits, you're all teachers at heart. And as in an elite but not an elitist public institution like UCLA, as the School of Music Dean Eileen Strumpel often reminds us, enlightened teachers share their tools openly. With the awe-inspiring diversity of life and educational experiences in this room, together you all have the potential to resolve many of society's problems, not only the hyper-specialized types, but those of injustice, oppression, unfathomable violence, prideful ignorance, and a lack of concern for one another. The musical metaphor I leave you with ties to the 1930 Skinner organ in this room, with thousands and thousands of hidden pipes offering diverse sounds reminiscent of your unique voices. As Dr. Bull draws more and more stops, I am reminded of the power that strength in numbers offers in tackling some of the world's most pressing issues. As great tension in this organ increases, our voices likewise can reinforce one another using the tools the race has found indispensable, leading to a grand resolution just as you have experienced in earning your doctorates. Fiat lux, let there be light, and share your light.